Yay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first Community Conversations webinar for EQ2. We are so thrilled to have you all join us here today. Our goal in these webinars is to share knowledge around best practices, implementation tips and strategies, work with special populations, and just the wide range of creative EQ2 applications that we've been hearing from agencies across the country. And I'll be honest, when we launched this, we really didn't know how many people would sign up, but we are happy to share that over 140 people signed up for this webinar today. No pressure to us, Danny. We're going to be great. But really, but for us, this really signals the strength of the community that we have here, but also the need for us to create regular spaces like this where we can connect with one another. So thank you all so much for being here. Before we get started, I'll briefly introduce myself, this webinar, a bit about the EQ2 program, and last but not least, our amazing guest for today, Danny Pectol. If you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Jess Linick, co-clinical director at the Lionheart Foundation, and on the call with me today behind the scenes are our outreach manager, Jan, and our other co-clinical director, Dr. Beth Kasarjan, so you might see their names pop up here and there. If you're not familiar with Zoom webinars, I invite you to just quickly take a peek at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and here you'll find the Q&A feature. This will be the main place where you can ask us questions throughout the webinar. But a big thanks to everyone who submitted questions beforehand. We're really going to try to get to everyone's questions live. We have turned off the chat for this webinar, just so you know. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll get a link to view it in a couple of days. And just a little about Lionheart and the EQ2 program. The Lionheart Foundation is a nonprofit organization that's been around for about 30 years. If you want to learn more about us, we encourage you to check out our website, lionheart.org. The program we'll be discussing today is EQ2. EQ2 is a staff self-regulation and support program. It's designed to help direct care staff build the essential and often very complex social and emotional regulation skills that they need to do their jobs well. It's not just a one and done training, but rather is meant to be an ongoing support program for staff that really gets embedded into agency culture. The EQ2 program includes handbooks for circle-based groups, an online training program for facilitators, and a mobile health app for staff that reinforces the skills they learn in group. And in addition, we have a training for supervisors to help them think about how they might embed EQ2 practices into supervision. And that brings us to our guest for today, the amazing Danny Pectol from ACH Child and Family Services in Fort Worth, Texas. He'll be talking with us about his creative use of EQ2 in supervision. Whether you're currently using EQ2 or just thinking about it, I know that you're going to get so much out of what he has to say. Danny is a great, great human and a great friend of mine. So just a little about him. Danny started his child welfare career as a child care staff at the Emergency Shelter and Assessment Center of the Children's Home of Lubbock in May of 1996. Over the next 11 years, he honed his on-the-floor skills, working with high acuity clients through various roles at the Children's Home of Lubbock and Texas Boys Ranch. Danny developed a reputation for effectively working with the highest acuity clients by building high-performing teams with innovative programming. In 2007, after completing his master's in social work at the University of Texas in Arlington, he became the director of the Emergency Shelter and Assessment Center. His teams became known for their ability to find the best fit of research-based solutions and cutting-edge programming to meet the complex needs of individual clients. Danny's teams also began moving heavily into trauma-informed care and the reduction of restraints. Danny and the teams he was part of became very skilled at building or rebuilding programs to meet the needs of their clients. He moved through various director and administrator roles in therapeutic programs in West Texas until 2016, when he relocated to Fort Worth to work with ACH Child and Family Services, a leading child welfare agency in Texas. We know there's a lot of ACH people on the call, so hello to you. He is currently the residential director for ACH's Wedgwood campus, where he continues to run innovative groundbreaking programs to meet the needs of at-risk youth. Hi, Danny.
Hey, Jess, how you doing?
Oh, it's good to see your face. Should we get started with our poll?
Yeah, let's get started.
Beautiful. So in a second, you'll see a poll come up on your screen asking you about your experiences with supervision. We are curious to hear from everyone. So please answer. Your answers are anonymous. And then as you submit and those results roll in, we'll get started. I know we're right around the time that I wanted to be, so this is good, Danny. While we're waiting, Danny, tell us a little bit about these guitars you have in the back. Which one's your favorite?
Ooh, okay. Well, the one that I play the most is probably the Telecaster right here. It's like a whiskey barrel top. That was one of my favorites. I built that one. It's one of my favorites. And then this one is a custom shop Relic Stratocaster. It's new to the house, so it's getting played a lot right now.
That's awesome. That's so cool. We love a well-rounded human, right? So it looks like the results are coming in, and lots of folks responding that structuring supervision effectively seems to be the biggest question, biggest challenge, which is great because that's what we're going to talk a lot about that today. Coming in second is not enough time, and third is handling staff's resistance to supervision. So just a little food for thought for us. So Danny, you're using EQ2. We know that it's helped you really adjust the way that you're doing supervision. But I'm curious, if we take a step back, I wonder if you might share some of the challenges you were noticing that led you to begin using EQ2 or using EQ2 in this way.
So when we come to the challenges, I think there was a lot of things going on, and we're always looking for what's the solution to the thing you've got going on. And one of the things that we had been noticing, especially in the last 3 years in the workforce, is our entry-level staff were kind of coming in they needed more work to get to that base level. We had some phenomenal team leaders on our campus. We still have phenomenal team leaders on our campus, and they're all-stars, but we were having this skill gap where you've got all-stars that are running and leading your shifts, and we're trying to get people in that can play that game with them. And so we're looking for, well, how can we close that gap, right? And understanding that this workforce that's coming in, one of the things that we're seeing is they need feedback fast. Their expectation with modern devices and just your workforce in general now is looking for immediate feedback. They want to know. And so we knew we were going to have to close some feedback loops to be able to get them what they need more often and kind of change the style that we've been doing. And we continue to experience the old way we did things isn't getting the workforce where we need to fast enough. And then with oversight, as it continues to be more and more and more, that accountability, you have less time to get those staff up to speed. And so those are some of the challenges, is how do we get there? And then you got your time frames, right? You got 1,000 things going on your campus. And how are we going to fit this in, right? How are we going to make time to give them these things that they need? And so we just started looking for solutions and figuring out what we're going to do and how we're going to get there. And it kind of went back to that idea of, what we're going to do to bring the workforce along. And, there's always this thing, well, you don't want to baby them, or you don't want to whatever. And I want to look at it a lot like we look at the kids, in that a lot of our trauma-informed skills are really around when they come to us. An analogy I like to use is like a sports analogy, is if we're getting athletes ready for a game, there's things they have to be able to do. They have to be able to run. We need to run wind sprints. We have to do practices. But if an athlete's injured, if they come in with a twisted ankle, I can't have that athlete start running wind sprints and doing things to get ready for the game until that ankle's healed, right? And so we got to lean in and heal the ankle. Well, if the workforce is coming in, or we got traumatized kids, we have to start where they're at, and we've got to bridge that first gap so that they're ready to run the wind sprints. And so one of the things we looked at and we're playing with was with EQ2. How do we use EQ2 to get them where we need to go?
Awesome. Awesome. So it sounds like really EQ2 helping you to not only bridge that gap, meet the staff where they were in terms of needing to develop their self-regulation skills, they need to develop lots of different things, and also this piece around providing an immediate feedback loop. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, I think. Tell us, how did you start to build your supervision structure for EQ2?
Well, I think there was a bunch of different ways we started. One of the first things you always have to do when you're starting something new, or you're trying to implement something new, or change the way you're implementing, is you got to move past that thing where I don't have time, or I'm waiting for the stars to align, the clouds to be right, everything. Sometimes when there's a problem, you can't wait for it to be right. You have to move, and you have to move in. So we started with, okay, we're going to move in and figure things out. And then you guys and we were kind of going through that, and then you guys asked us to pilot kind of that beta on y'all's new supervision training last year. And so we started going through that training as we're having this real discussion on how do we bring their level up. And so we started with a pilot. The original experiment was we started last week of September, first week of October last year, and we wanted to start with our team leads. Like, you want to start with someone that's already in, so you can play with it a little bit, and you know they're going to be honest in their feedback. And so we started with weekly trainings for the team supervisors, like a 1 hour training, and we were trying to keep it as hard as it is to keep Danny from yapping. 20 minutes at most of Danny yapping, and the rest of it is we're going to take a direct skill and we're going to play with the skill, whether it's setting up shift, whether it's how to do an intake, whether it's just things that they're going to have to do in their role. We'll talk about it a little bit, and then we're going to get out and play with it. And we did that for a few months, and toward the end of October, as we're playing with y'all's training, and we're seeing some results starting to come out of these weekly trainings and good conversation with these team leads. A member on our team said, you know, we're in this thing on EQ2 and they talk about weekly supervision. We only do it monthly. Maybe just listen. And I was like, oh, because that's a big time. Like, how are we going to do that every week? And we kicked it back and forth, and we thought, you know what, if we were doing it weekly instead of 1 hour in a month, if we try to do it weekly, if you can keep it to 15 or 20 minutes, but it's direct, quick feedback, and it's structured, like there's a structure to it, right? There's things we're talking about, there's things we're asking. Can we close some of that feedback group? And where do you start? You start with your admin team. So in November, second half of November, we started with the admin team, like with us, the 3's, right? If we can't do it and we don't do it, we can't expect it to happen for the staff. So we started it with us, and we were playing with it, and we liked it. And, you know, some of our supervisions did not go 15 minutes. They went, because we were used to talking, an hour. And so then we added structure. So there's, in EQ2, when you go through your supervisor training, one of the forms is, and the staff have it in the books, it's that skills checklist, right? And I'm going to rate myself on these skills. And then as the supervisor, we're going to talk about it together. And I might have to add some context to, are you really a 10 in this? Or I know you rated yourself a 4, but I think that's a little bit low. And we can have a real conversation about where they're at, and then kind of take that and structure up where we're going to go. And so that skill checklist for staff is pretty common, but there's also one in supervisor training for supervisors. And yeah, we can do that. And then we have another system where we document it, and we have one of those. And one of my favorite questions on one of our weekly check-ins is at the bottom is, what do I want to be held accountable for this week, right? So I got to send that off to Melissa every week. Melissa, what are you holding me accountable for, right? And then what you tell your boss what you want to be held accountable for, it's easier. And so if you combine that with, we got these targeted goals on skills that you're going to get better with kids on the floor, then it kind of goes together. So it's kind of where we started. And the other part of that is, and we're still playing and tweaking with it. People that work for me know that it's never good enough. We're always tweaking something. Danny's always playing with it. Or in this case, you know, our staff coach, Caitlin, she plays with it a lot. And she's gotten this way that we're looking at it, where just like when you do a plan of service with a kid, right? We're doing treatment plans. There's 1,000 things we want them to get better at, but we better focus on 2, right? 1 or 2 that we really want to focus on. So we're looking at that. What are the 1 or 2 things that we're really focusing on, and making sure the person running the program knows what that is. Then their team supervisor, team leader that runs their shift, they know what that is. And so we're every day with that staff talking that goal. And those goals, because they're familiar off those sheets, you're going to have EQ2 goals in their apps where they can set their weekly goals, their 2 goals, as those 2 goals. And then when your team lead is checking in with them at the first of the shift, they're going to talk about, what are your goals? And what does that look like today? And okay, you know, you've got little Sarah, and Sarah likes the power struggle. So fix your face is your goal this week. What's that look like with Sarah, you know, when she drops a couple cuss words this afternoon because she has a family visit today? How are we going to play that? What are you going to do that? And those staff are getting that immediate supervision. And if it goes the way we want, the way we structured, they're going to get that talk at the start of their shift. And then their team lead's going to talk them at the end of the shift and say, okay, quick, how did we do? How did we do on our goals? We set an intention together at the first of the shift. How did we finish it?
Beautiful.
And that way they can get that, we're closing that feedback loop. And then program supervisor over the whole program is checking in with them on that weekly supervision, or their team supervisor checking in, and you're having that structured supervision on top of just the daily drops.
Wow. So if I can summarize briefly, Danny, what
Yeah.
you're saying, it sounds like you started with your team leads, started with your, and my cat has just joined us for anybody who sees his tail. You started with your team leads, really making sure that they understood supervision structure and that they understood EQ2, and you were working with them specifically on what they needed to work on. And then you brought that to staff and said, and like kind of using the structure of EQ2 and like the specific goals and what we're really hoping that EQ2 helps staff to develop, you were able to create a real continuity so that staff feel really held in the skills that they're working on. So it's not just this isolated thing that happens once a month where they get a boatload of feedback and then kind of who knows what happens to it. Every day, someone is checking in with them about what are your EQ2 goals this week. And that is consistent across all different levels of folks in the agency. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right. And so when you back up and someone says that out loud and you're thinking about how many things are going, and licensing just showed up and I got an intake, and it feels like a lot, but here's what we've experienced since we started with the team leads and the admin team, and then January we rolled everybody in. So we're doing 2 weekly trainings, one for the YCSs to back up the team leads play, and one for the team leads, because if your team leads are in, the core is going to be there, right? And what we're seeing is my supervisors have so much, especially the people running the whole programs, they've got so much more time, because you know what we're dealing with a lot less? Angry teenagers in our offices, right? We're dealing with a lot less there was this emergency situation, and now I'm calling licensing, and now there's a licensing investigator making sure we did everything we're supposed to do. So we're investing time on the front end, and it's a lot, right? And you have to do that as a team. But after you roll it for a little bit, what we're experiencing is most of on-call calls right now, honestly, with my team is, hey, I'm gonna be a little bit late to shift.
Wow.
My kid is sick. They just tested positive for strep. I may not be able to make it today. That's the call we're getting, not, hey, we need help right now. You know, this situation, what do you want us to do? We're getting less and less and less of the emergency calls and all of the stuff that's surrounded by that. Because one incident, it's not just the incident, it's all the time, it's all the documentation, it's all the debriefs.
It's everything.
And, and when your staff are flowing with the kids well, you're getting a lot less of that. And it sounds like a lot of time, but your stress level's lower, and you're really not spending that much more time. My timesheets on my program suits are not getting bigger. They're actually getting a little bit smaller, and our stress levels are coming down a little bit.
It sounds like really making, because we got this question a bunch, is like, I don't really have time for supervision. How do you make time? How do we do this? And it sounds like what you're saying is investing a little bit of that time up front to really scaffold folks so they know what they're doing. And then using EQ2, things get really just, you know, very seamlessly woven into, I think you shared with me this once, what used to be, you know, you're talking with staff during the day anyway. You're talking with them for 15 minutes here or there anyway about this or about that. But now you have real, much clearer kind of like direction for what to talk with them about. I wonder if you might share a little bit more specifically, Danny, about how you use the app, or like what that looks like, or how you've seen that be useful.
So I want to start with the disclaimers on the app. We tried the app several times. It took us, it's difficult, right? I'm not an app person. I'm a face-to-face talk about it, let's write it down person. So apps are not my thing, but some of my staff, especially my young staff, apps are their thing. And where I want to have a conversation, write that down, I'm very relational. They want to use that. They want an app that tells them what their goal is. They want an app that tells them 1, 2, 3, how do I do this, right? So they have a conversation with their staff coach and she lays it out for them. This is your goal. Then they can pull out their phone, they can look at their app and they say, okay, that's what I'm doing today, right? What was I supposed to do? Oh, stop, breathe, and choose is, 1, 2, 3, how do I do this? So that's the start of the app. The app also works well for, there is a check-in on it, if you don't have a regular check-in process. And you can set your intention for the day. So if I've got an app savvy group, even if I'm not an app person, I'm running a shift, I can get them all together and we can set that intention of the day together in the app. And it's in a way that works in their brains that may not work in mine, but it's about them being to where they need to be, right?
That's true.
You got to meet my staff where they are.
Exactly. Exactly.
the other thing that we start to see is as they get used to these terminologies and whatever, you may see them kind of doing some of that stuff that they used to be dependent on the app to do for them to get that neural pathway built. And you'll
Mhm.
see where once the neural pathway is built, their use of the app may drop some because they know what their goals are and whatever. But early on, especially staff that are just getting in the rhythm to set up that shift or to think through that setup, it's nice for them and it speaks in a language that they
That's
understand.
beautiful. Danny, I wonder if you might want to share what challenges you've come up against and maybe a little bit about how you've worked through them. Like just to give a little context too, we've got a couple questions people asked about creating buy-in or, how do you get people on board? I don't know if those were challenges that came up for you or any other challenges that you might want to share.
So I think that anytime you're implementing something new, whether it be EQ2 or anything else, there is the start of anything you do new, whether it's working out, right? Whatever it is. There's a new habit and there's a start to the new habit. And there's this first part of that habit or routine or program that you're running to run your shift that you have to start with, and you got to move through this initial level of resistance
Mm.
where, I'm going to the gym every day, and at 3 weeks, I may not see any results, right? But if I keep holding it, in about a month, someone's going to say, hey, you've been working out? You're looking good. What's going on there, right? You're going to get that. You're going to get that feedback. And it's the same in this stuff. So a lot of times with the staff, you're doing these weekly trainings, these weekly supervisions on the first part of it. And at first you may not feel like it's getting better. Part of it is you're in it, right? And then it starts to roll. And then things start to happen, just like they do with the kids when we're working trauma farm. It starts to happen. And something happens, you're like, whoa, that just happened. Right? Whoa. Did you hear what she just said? And then it really starts to roll. So the first thing is you got to hold it and know it's going to take a little bit for it to sink in. It's not instant, right? Nothing's instant. So you got to move through the initial level and understand, hey, a 1% growth a week is a lot at the end of the year.
That is true.
So we're taking our little steps, acknowledge your little steps. The second part that makes implementation or buy-in hard that I like about EQ2, we do a lot of things that are all about the skills with the kids. Talk a lot about the kids. This is for them.
Yeah.
This is really about the staff. And so I had a new group. We're just starting to really focus in on our overnight staff, right? And I've got a really good group of overnight staff right now. And so I've got a bunch of people that are actually like in nursing school or they're working on different degrees. So they're high level folks and they're in these overnights and they've worked in tough environments. And we're doing EQ2 and we started that first group with them. And this is where the buy-in happens in EQ2 for me. And if you do it right, first you talk about where this program came from, because it didn't come from some person at a university that wrote something, right? This is you guys have been in the mix. This
Yeah.
program, Power Source and those other ones are tried in really tough environments. So we start saying, hey, look, this is about, this is kind of where it came from. And then you ask the staff in that first session, which I love, is why are you here? Why'd you show up? And you go around that circle and everybody talks about why they're here. And nobody says, I'm here because this industry makes so much money, right? No, they're all there to make a difference in lives of kids, right? Right. That's why they showed up. I wanted to make a difference. And half of them, they kind of hint at what their personal trauma is as it goes around. And after you go around, there's that first paragraph in EQ2 that's written by a staff. And then I say, look, we're going to read this statement. And I want you to know who wrote this statement. The person that wrote this statement was a staff like you that worked in an environment with high intensity kids. And just after they've all shared and you validate their sharing, right? It's a heartfelt moment.
Yeah.
And then you read that first paragraph. And after that first paragraph, they get it, right? Now, your first session of EQ2, you're not going to get to that chapter. You're going to get to page 2. Because once that happens, then they feel it. And that's what I like about the idea of this program. They need to feel it. Any trauma-informed program, if you want buy-in, they have to feel it. It can't be a box you check.
Yeah.
The app is cool, but it's not about checking the clicks on the app. If they can feel it, then it's going to make a difference and it's going to change them on the floor. And then when they see what they're doing and how it affects them, their stress level and how much more they enjoy working with kids because they've been doing some of the things you asked them to do that they kind of thought was silly and nonsense. And they'll say that, Danny, this is nonsense. I know, just do it. And then they start doing it and they come back, all right, Danny, I
Yeah.
want to talk, right? And I got my Miss Moss, right? And she'll say, when she comes back, she always brings this wisdom back to me when she tries our skills. And I love talking to Wallace, but it's that, and you can see it in their eyes. Danny, this feels different. I like
Yeah.
this.
It reminds
And
me of, we got a question that someone submitted earlier about, can you talk about seeing the core self in staff? How we
yeah,
take trauma-informed care and direct that into our coaching of staff. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing, that you are really, this is not just, as you said, a program that you're throwing at them, being like, do this thing because we're telling you to do this thing, and this is about the kids, and you have to be better with the kids. Yes. And this is also a program that's really for you. I wonder if you might just talk a little bit about that.
well, I think that's so much of what we do, and I think it's so much of we talk about building cores, right? The key to successful units and being and making changes in kids is really those people on the floor, right? And I've talked a lot about our team leads. If your team leads and your program soups that are running those or unit directors or whatever you want to call them that run your individual units, if they're in and they're got it and they're good people that are there for the right reason, then you can build around that core, but you have to see that in them. And the truth is, and of course, I'm lucky. I got awesome people that work for me, right? And our team is amazing. And this isn't a Danny thing. This is a team thing. This is Wedgwood.
Yeah.
This is those staff, right? It's ACH. It's our values, but it's in the staff and it's seeing where they are. And also part of what I like about EQ2 is it acknowledges, number one, they've got trauma, and probably the reason they're showing up to make a difference is because somebody made a difference for them.
Yeah.
And really tying in everything I do into who you are and where you are and the emotion of where you are and understanding my own emotions so I can do that for the kids, because that's why they showed up. They want to be that person for that kid.
Yeah.
And this teaches them that the thing with that comes with it. We talked a little bit about the trauma. The thing that comes with that is if I don't understand my trauma and my attachment style, and I don't understand how my own neural pathways are going to affect how I just responded to that kid, or how do I mindfully react to this, right? How do I get myself in a place where I can deal with this because it's coming, and it's not just like I can leave, right? We don't just leave the children. So when it starts to go that way, and I start to feel this way, what do I do to get me right? Because me being escalated and them being escalated doesn't end well. So keep your brain from getting hijacked. Keep yourself in your cerebral cortex, and this is super helpful because it talks to them about that. We talk all the time about how to get the kids there. We don't talk enough about how do we get there.
That's
And I
right.
think the big
And
thing
what
in
I,
EQ2.
yeah. And what I love, Danny, about how you've infused EQ2 into supervision is that just the fact that you are really spending this time coaching staff on these skills shows them that you value them and that they are a member of the team. They are cared for. You care about them. You see them for who they are. You see them for their struggles. And listen, we all have struggles. We all have things that we're working on. And the fact that you're, just very clearly saying, yeah, like these are our goals. We all have goals. I think that's just so beautiful and such a clear example of how to practically use this kind of idea of seeing the core self in staff. Before we, we're going to open it up to more questions. So I really would encourage any folks that if you have questions for Danny, to please put them in the Q&A. But Danny, I wonder if you might want to share like little words of wisdom for folks that are, whether they're just starting to use EQ2 or they've been using it for a while and they're like, yeah, but our supervision needs a little help. What would you say are your biggest pieces of advice around really infusing EQ2 into supervision in this way?
So I think just supervision in general and
Habit.
EQ2 and how we go. I think it has to be a habit, right?
Yeah.
And I think where it's hard and is we've been rolling it for 4 weeks and it's going pretty good, and I just not feeling it this week, so I don't do it. And then next week's kind of the same, and then you look up and it's been 5 weeks since you've done anything. Right? But that happens now with the current supervision change. So if I wasn't doing it once a week and I was doing it once a month, we're good this month.
You got any
And
issues? No, okay, we're fine.
staff's gone 60 days with no feedback. So it's got to be a priority. And even when I'm not feeling it, I've got to put it in my rhythm, right? I got to get it done. The other part is we really encourage the staff to participate in their own supervision. So it isn't just I schedule a time and you come and I got a list and I talk at you. We actually send the supervision form to them and they fill it out before they show up, and that's an expectation.
Beautiful.
So there is a level of buy-in, right? So, and some of your staff are going to write you 3 letters. Each one, right? It's going to be nothing. And some of your staff are going to write you a small novel for every supervision. And they're thinking, that's okay. That's okay. Because you kind of know where they're at and you can go conversation off that, right? And some of your staff write the 3 sentences. You watch out for them when you actually get there because they really want to talk. They didn't want to write that down, right? And then you have the ones that write all of it down. You look at it, no, okay. And does that conversation shorter. The other thing is in it is I try to use the opportunities I have, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, to turn conversations that you just kind of, we talk through something. I want to turn that into supervision. So I'll give you an example. Caitlin's our staff coach, right? And it was a big deal for me to let go of these trainings and give them to her. And she's running this, right? So the other day I pop in her office and she catches me and we're talking a little bit about what she's up to, where she's going, what she's thinking, kid situation. It's that quick pop in the door conversation that we start to have. And then I realized this is about to go a little deeper. So I looked at her, I was like, I shut her door. I was like, okay, this is supervision. She laughs. We both open up, where we keep, the supervision stuff and we start running down the list, right? Okay. So we finish talking about what we've got. Then we hit our other things that are on our supervision list. So it's actually making those casual conversations that may not always been as productive as before. I could turn that into supervision, right? Like you have that moment where the staff walks in your door with the minor complaint, but they really want to talk deeper. And you're like, shut the door. This is now your supervision. Come on. And then you can make sure that we get through that. And we're using their time well and our time well, but also we're showing the value in them. And there's some kind of value in that when a staff comes to you with a problem, you're like, hey, shut the door. Let's get this done. You've got my attention, undivided attention right now.
Right.
That's really important. Staff need that. Our kids need that. Our staff need that.
That's so true. That's so true.
They need to feel important. So make sure you're doing those kind of things and then hear them. As you go through this process, they're going to have something to say about some of these things. And some of their ideas are really phenomenal, right? And some of their feedback, like I said, this isn't just Danny had a crazy idea. This is a team talking, and this whole thing that has become is a team, and it's lots of feedback from everybody on that team. And we talk these things through and we back up and we look at them and we have real conversations about, okay, is this getting us where we want to go? Is this working the way we want? Do we need to tweak it? Or that went really well, but okay, let's tweak that next time. Let's make a tweak, see what happens. Or, and then we're measuring them. The kind of fun thing is we can pull those sheets and you can look at, is our needle moving?
Yeah. Yeah. Really kind of using those to assess growth over time. Yeah. What I really love, Danny, and we have a lab question that came in that we'll get to in a second, that you're embracing, this, we call this growth mindset, right? But also this essence of collaboration that in EQ2, when we're doing, for those of you not familiar with EQ2, a large portion of the groups are done in restorative justice circles, which is a real level playing field. There's collaboration, everyone is sharing, and it sounds like you've just extended that out into your whole team. So everybody feels valued. There is maybe a hierarchy, but there's also not sometimes a hierarchy. And that sounds like it's really, really working so well for you. We got this question that I think it's a great question. How would you sell EQ2 to a not so receiving staff, trying to get them on board? I think you answered this a little bit earlier in talking about kind of like how EQ2 is laid out, but if there's anything else you want to share, if you've come across staff that are just maybe not super open to this idea, or even just this kind of, staff feeling a little resistant, which I know has come up as people were sharing their experiences in supervision.
So 2 things happen. One, when you're doing the weekly feedback, and the weekly supervision and the weekly trainings. And it sounds like a lot, but it makes a big difference. What you're going to figure out really quick with these staff, the skills are either going to pick up or they're not quick, and that they're either in or out quick. And the truth is, not everybody wants to do this, and not everybody wants to play the game we want to play it. And so with this feedback loop, as a supervisor, you're going to figure out really soon, are they team material or not? But the other thing is, because there's so much input and feedback, the culture is going to shift. And people that really aren't in are going to rub wrong against your culture. And that's really where the magic starts to happen, is that there are some people that come in and this just isn't the way they want to do it, and they still see the world this way, and that's okay. That's okay. It's just my campus is not going to be comfortable for you. You're not going to like this, right? And so we figured that out really quick. And some people come in and they kind of have their way, but then they see it work with the kid, right? And then they feel good. Like, okay, I did it this weird way but that felt good. I know Danny's asking us to do these things and it feels like a checklist, but at the end of the shift, I'm less stressed. Man, we got through this. Man, it's been a long time since something huge happened. And when it did, I felt supported. Like, those things make a difference. And when they feel that difference, it'll change. But you have some people that no matter how it happens or how it feels, they're not in. With this level of feedback, instead of just once a month, you're going to know and they're going to know. And you can have that real good conversation of, hey, look, I get it. This is kind of how we do it. I know this culture isn't it for everybody. Like, you're a good person. You're a great person. And just because they don't do that doesn't mean they're not good people. It just means that high acuity clients in this environment isn't the thing. That's okay. That's okay.
That's okay. That's okay. I wonder if you might also circle back a little bit to, how when you see the core self in staff and when you really are meeting them where they're at, how that also shifts maybe their resistance, lack of resistance to EQ2. Like, have you noticed that as you're really meeting them where they are, that those staff that are not super bought in start to become more bought in?
I'm not sure and I'm not sure it's a buy-in thing, because they showed up for the right reason. Like, really, when you talk to most people, 99.99999% of people, they showed up to help kids, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the start. What we're seeing is a change in behaviors and neural pathways. So what we're seeing is, if we're doing a good job, and this is back to the supervisors, is not only do we need to be seeing their core self, but we also need to honor them enough to have a real conversation. And it's supposed we get real uncomfortable with that in social work, right? I don't want to, but no, you need to say that. Like, you need to be honest. Look, to do what you want to do and be what you want to be, this is what I got to see. And this is where we are, and this is what's going on. And I like you, and you're a valuable staff, and this is what you want to be. This is what you're going to have to do to get there. And having that real, honest, sometimes it's hard. And I've entered one of those conversations before with, okay, I know what we're about to say is going to hurt your feelings a little bit. And I want you to understand that I'm saying this because I value you as staff. I think you can be this thing that you want to be. But if you want to be it, I need to see this, right? And there's something real about that. And we do that with kids, right? The kids don't want us to always just tell them everything. They want us to give them real feedback on the things they could be better at. And then tell them, how do you get better at this, right? So, hey, I need you to be better with mindfully and reacting. She went to 9 and you went with her. All right. How can we do this? And then we have a real conversation, and then they've got to practice with the skill. And I think that's the other thing. Sports analogy again. Sorry, Jess.
Okay. For anyone who doesn't know, Danny used to play football, and he's excellent. And so that's the sports analogies.
Yeah,
Jess,
we do lots of sports. There's sports in my house, right? And so I think with staff too, and what I like about EQ2, and like where we're looking at staff and where they are, kind of like we do with kids, is if I want to take you out to teach you to shoot free throws, Jess, what we're going to do is we're going to go out and we're going to practice, right? If I just tell you how to do it and we don't ever go out on the floor and you shoot a couple, then it's not going to happen. And the other thing is, even if I teach you perfect and the first 4 you get perfect, at some point you're going to miss some shots, and that's okay. But the more we practice and the more we do it together, the more reps you get in, the more likely are the shots are going to go in. And that's part of this process, right? For the staff to be able to take something, sometimes it has to be repeated, and sometimes it has to be important and powerful to them. And you can combine those things because when you see their core self, you know what they're really about, you know what they really want, and the difference they really want to make. Then if you can lean into that and cage everything around, look, this is it. This is how we're going to do it. And you can do this. And then they start connecting with those kids and it starts to move and they start to feel that their purpose in life is getting filled and they're seeing how the skills make a difference. Then they get hungry and then you see them roll. Or part of seeing the core self and knowing where your staff are. And what I love about the ProQual, I was a big fan of the ProQual, and it's a big part of EQ2, like knowing where you are and be honest with yourself as to where your burnout is. And maybe the reason you're struggling in the house with the kids right now has nothing to do with the kids.
Yeah.
What's going on with you? And that's a powerful thing to have a conversation with staff. Hey, I know you. This doesn't feel like you. What's going on? Yeah. And how can I help you handle what's going on so that when you come here, your mind is fresh, your stress is free because that kid needs you today. How do we help handle this to handle this? But you got to be honest on that ProQual. Don't lie to me on your ProQual. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself on your ProQual. If you lie to yourself on your ProQual, you will burn out and crash. Vicarious trauma will destroy you. Yeah. And so I think that's another big part of it is, but how do you do that? Same way we do it with kids' relationship. You better have a relationship with those.
That's right. That's it. Oh my goodness, friends, we are right about to close out for the day. Just a couple more minutes. Danny, you are a gem. I want to thank you so much. I'm going to thank you again, probably 80 more times, but I just really want to thank you for your generosity, for sharing what you did today. I'm going to try not to cry. But if you know me, you know that happens. So thank you, Danny. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming to our very first EQ2 Community Conversations webinar. We really could never and really would never be able to create the programs that we do without this community. So from the bottom of our hearts, we really, really want to thank you. We did see some questions in the chat about folks asking to see other parts of our program. So if you want to check out things like the app or the facilitator training, feel free to scan these QR codes or head to our website, lionheart.org. Don't worry if you don't get these codes now. We're going to send an email with all of this information alongside the recording in a few days. If you have more questions for Danny about he's using EQ2 or anything else you want to ask Danny, because Danny is a wealth of information, or if you have questions for us at the Lionheart team, just email us at eq2@lionheart.org. We know that we could not get to all of your questions today, so please reach out to us. And also these webinars will be ongoing and we're going to offer them a couple times a year. We would love to hear from you if you are interested in sharing your EQ2 work with the community. And we are so excited to announce what is coming. We're going to have an EQ2 community board that comes live on our site for EQ2 subscribers, where you're going to be able to ask questions, share your experiences, and get support from the Lionheart team and each other. So that will be coming down to us in the next couple of months. We will share that when it does. And if you're going to ACRC in Phoenix, we will all be there, Danny included. So please, stop by our booth. We're going to be at something called the Zen Den. Very excited about that, or our workshop to say hi to us. And then coming up on your screen now is going to be another QR code, which links to our webinar survey. You will also get this in your recap email. This is your place to not only share your thoughts about the webinar, but also for us to learn from you about what you'd like to hear or see more of. We are really committed, across all of our Lionheart programs. We would never be able to do this without you. And we just want to help as many people as we can. And the only way for us to do that, not the only way, one of the main ways we do that is to hear from you about what you need. So please feel free to answer this survey as honestly as possible. And always remember, we are here for you in your EQ2 journey. As Beth often says in our consultations, we love nothing more than talking with you all and being a part of this absolutely amazing community of people who are really just trying to make this world a better place, So thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you, Danny, for being here with us. And looking forward to seeing and talking with you all soon. We're going to leave this up.
Jess.
Yay! Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Danny. And again, folks, please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We'll leave this link up here for a little while, and the webinar will close in a couple of minutes. Talk to y'all soon.